This conference will now be recorded.
Right, let's start. So in the last session, we have started with what modulation techniques. So we have seen the internal subroutines and external subroutines. Now let us see how to pass what parameters to subroutines. Okay, parameters to subroutines. Type of program, executable. Understood. Type of program is executable. Right. So here, let me declare some two variables, some variables like v underscore x type I. I'll directly initialize the values. I'll say value 10, v underscore x or v underscore y, type integer. I'll say value something 5, right? So here, just for understanding, I'll give a message begin of program and end of program. Right, so between these two statements, I'll try to call the subroutine. So already we have seen how to call the subroutine by using what perform keyword. Perform, I can give any subroutine name. I'll give the subroutine name as something sub1. So for this parameter, I'm sorry. For this subroutine, I want to pass these two variables as parameters. Okay, so if you take our C, C++, Java, suppose in C, C++, assume that I'll declare the variables like this: int x equal to 10, something y equal to 5, right? How do you call a function? In C language, we have functions. In Java, we have methods. So if you take C language, I'm calling a function sub1. For this sub1, I want to pass those two variables, x and what? Y. X and y. So in the parentheses, what you'll do? You will say x comma y. This is how you call the function. And how do we define the function there? If this function is not returning any value, we'll say void sub1. How many parameters you're passing? Two parameters. So here also I'll take some two parameters, m and what? N. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, here you'll say something int m comma int n, something like this. Okay, and inside this you'll declare what? Some variables. You'll write some logic, whatever the logic you want. Okay, so here also, in case of ABAP, if you want to pass standard data types as parameters, I repeat, if you want to pass standard data types as parameters to subroutines, when I say standard data types, it can be integer, it can be pack, date, time, character, string. So all this comes under predefined data types or standard data types. So whenever you want to pass standard data type variables as parameters to subroutines, we have to use a keyword called as using. Here I'd say using. What are my variable names? V underscore x and V underscore y. So what I'm doing here, I'm calling a subroutine sub1, and for this subroutine I am passing two variables as parameters. What kind of variables? They are integers. Integers comes under what? Standard data type. So whenever we deal with standard data types as parameters, we have to use a keyword called as what? Using. Okay, so excuse me, if I do the syntax check now, I'll get an error saying that the form sub1 does not exist. Whenever we call the subroutine, control jumps to what? Subroutine definition. But we have not defined any definition in So obviously you'll get an error. The form sub1 does not exist. So when I do syntax check, yes, I got the error. Form sub1 does not exist. So let us define this particular subroutine. Where to define the subroutines? At the end of the program. Already in the last class you have seen all the block definitions, all the subroutine definitions should be defined at the end of the program. So here I'll try to define form sub1. As of now, I am not providing any logic within the subroutine. I am defining the empty subroutine, empty subroutine. Let's see what is the further error I'll get. So when I do syntax check, I got an error in the seventh line. What is the seventh line? You are trying to call the subroutine. What is the error message? Different number of parameters in form and perform. Different number of parameters in form and perform. Routine sub1. Number of formal parameters is 0. Number of actual parameters is 2. So whenever you're dealing with the parameters, either in subroutines or in function models or in methods, we have what actual parameters and formal parameters. Actual parameters are the one which we specify at the time of calling the blocks. Formal parameters are the one which we specify at the as part of block definitions. So where you are calling the subroutine here in the seventh line, so these two parameters, what are I'm passing, I'll call that what actual parameters. Understood? So while calling the subroutine, we are passing two actual parameters, but while defining the subroutine, I have not specified any parameters. So number of formal parameters is 0. So if I leave it like this, I would get what? An error. I'm getting the error. So let me just comment it for your understanding. I'll give the inline comment saying syntax error. So what I have to do now? I have to define that subroutine. So also form sub1. At the time of definition also, we have to use the keyword what using. Okay, form sub1 using. How many actual parameters we have? Two actual parameters. So the number of formal parameters depends on what number of actual parameters. Okay, the names of the formal parameters and actual parameters can be same or it can be different. Okay, so here I'll say v underscore x and what v underscore y. So wantedly what I'm doing, formal parameters also I am giving the same name. So when I do syntax check, I don't have any errors. So this is very much valid. Okay, so I'll say or what I'll do now, form sub1. Okay, using wantedly, just to avoid confusion, I'll give the formal parameter names as m and n. But what I'm trying to say is the actual parameter names and formal parameters name can be same or it can be different. So I can go for v underscore x or v underscore y or something m and n kind of thing. Okay, right. Okay. Now, while specifying this formal parameters m and n, are we specifying any data type here? No. So, whatever the data type is available for actual parameters, the same data type will be applied to what? Formal parameters. I believe in case of C language and Java, okay, I have to specify the data type of the formal parameter. Understood. At the time of specifying the formal parameters, I believe we have to specify the what data type. But whereas in case of ABAP, we should not specify. It will have the intelligence. It will have the intelligence. What are the data types available for the actual parameter? The same data type will be applied for what? Formal parameters. Okay. Right. So now what I can do, based on this formal parameters, I can what perform some business logic. So what I'll do is within this form end form, I'll declare one variable. I'll say data. Okay. I can give any name here, but in general, the local variable names in most of the projects, the local variable names will start with LV. What are the variables we declare within a block, within a subroutine, within a function model, within a method? They are called as what? Local variables. Okay, the lifetime and scope of the local variables is within that block. Once a control comes out of that block, the memory allocated for that local variable will be destroyed. Now this v underscore x and v underscore y, I will call them as global variables. Any variables which we declare outside the block, they are what? Global variables. The lifetime and scope of the global variables is throughout the object, throughout the program execution. Whereas the lifetime and scope of the local variable is within the block where it is declared. Once a control comes out of the block, the memory allocated for the local variable will be destroyed. So just to differentiate global variables and local variables, I'll follow the local variable naming convention starting with what? LV. Okay, you can give any name whatever you want. So I'll say LV underscore res type it. Don't think that since I gave it as L, I'm calling it as local. You give whatever you want here. Understood? But any variable which you declare within a block, they are what? Local. Okay, so just to be meaningful, I'll give it as res type I. So LV underscore res is equal to, I'll say m plus n. Then here I'll say right, sum is what? LV underscore res. Done. Save. Check for the syntax, no errors. So when I execute, I got begin of program, sum is 15, end of program. Okay, like this, I can call the subroutine any number of times. Once again, I'll call perform sub1 using directly I'll pass the values. This is also fine. Earlier I passed the variables as parameters. Now directly I'm passing the values. What kind of values? Directly the integers. So again this 20 will be copied to m and 12 will be copied to n. Based on that we are doing some calculation and executing. So I'm calling it twice. I got first time 15, next I got 32. Let me try to debug this. Then if you have any questions you can ask me. First let me debug. Okay, so as usual I cannot debug variable declarations. Let us start debugging the executable statement. So I'll put the cursor on the sixth line. I'll set the breakpoint. Right, execute. Yeah, observe this carefully. So in my program I'm having global variables as well as local variables. My program contains global variables as well as local variables. What do you mean by global variables? Any variable which you declare outside the block definitions, they are called as what? Global variables. So if you see v underscore x, what is the lifetime of these global variables? Throughout the program, they are recognized throughout the program, they are accessible throughout the program. So if you see v underscore x, what is the value it is showing? 10. V underscore y is how much? 5. Okay, now similarly I'm having some local variable lv underscore res. This is declared where? This is declared within a block, within a subroutine. So I call it as a local variable. So if you see here, if I double click on lv underscore res, okay, it is saying that select valid variable. So it is not showing me it here. I'll type it manually. lv underscore res. What it is showing us? See, invalid variable because the memory is not yet allocated. Memory is not yet allocated for this local variable lv underscore res. When the memory will be allocated, when the control comes to this block, memory will be allocated. Even this m and n are also local. Formal parameters are also local. If I type m here, it is saying what? Invalid variable. Understood? It is not recognizing those formal parameters. Okay, these two x and y are global variables. Done. So I'm providing the executing this write statement. I'll say fi. Done. It has executed. I got the output as something. Begin of program. Now I'm trying to call a subroutine by passing x and y as parameter. Now the control jumps to what? Subroutine definition. So internally what happens? X is assigned to M, Y is assigned to what? N. When the control is transferred to the subroutine definition, memory gets allocated. When the control is transferred to the subroutine definition, memory gets allocated for your formal parameters and local variables. So as of now, they are not recognized. So when I say Fi here, control is jumping there. Now you can see memory got allocated for this RES, M and N. RES is by default 0, M is 10, N is 5. So what is the meaning? X value is assigned to M, Y value is assigned to what? What? N. Done. Then I'm doing some calculation here, F5. I'm printing it. So sum is on. So it might have displayed the output as what? See, sum is what? 15. Now control is coming out of the subroutine. All the statements within the subroutine got executed. Control is coming out of the subroutine. The moment control comes out of the subroutine, the memory for these formal parameters and the local variables will be destroyed. As of now, RES value is 15, M value is 10, N value is 5. So when I say Fi, where the control jumps to the next statement from where the subroutine was called. So I'll say Fi here. Good. Control is going to what? 8th line. You can see it again, memory got destroyed. So the scope of this formal parameters, the scope of this local variables are within the block. Next again, I'm calling once again the same subroutine. This time directly I'm passing this 20 and what? 12. 20 will be copied to M, 12 will be copied to what? N. Okay, when I say F5, then again the memory got allocated. RES is by default 0, M and so on. So that's all. So I'll say F8. I'm not interested to debug further. I'll say F8. So the overall summary so far is whenever you want to pass standard data types as parameters to subroutines, we have to use a keyword using as part of subroutine call as well as part of subroutine definition. The parameters we specify at the time of calling, we call them as actual parameters. The parameters we specified at the time of definition, they are called as what? Formal parameters. These are called as actual parameters. These are called as what? Formal parameters. Okay, right. So in this case, what you are doing is we are calling the subroutine by passing some integers as what? Parameters. Based on that values, we are performing some calculation and displaying the result. Okay. So this value RES can be accessed within this block. No? It cannot be accessed outside the block. The moment control comes out of this block, memory allocated for that variable RES will be destroyed. Now what I want is, I want to what? Return the values. Means I want to pass the parameters as well as based on their parameters, I want to do some calculations. After doing calculations, I want to return that values to the calling area from wherever you are calling the subroutine. There I want to return. So what I'll do is, yeah, somewhere here, observe this carefully. I'll declare two more variables. I'll say v underscore r1 type I, v underscore r2 type what? I. Okay, v underscore r1 type I and r2 as what? Type I. Done. Now, what is the agenda here? I want to pass the parameters to subroutines as well as return the values. So I'll say perform. Let me give the subroutine name as sub2. Sub2. Okay, I'll set the v underscore x value as something 20, v underscore y value as something 15. They are my current values. Okay, so I'm calling another subroutine. Don't think that you have to give sub1, sub2. You can give any name. For simplicity, I'm giving sub2. I want to pass this x and y as parameters. How do you pass? Using v underscore x and v underscore y. My agenda is inside this subroutine, I want to perform the addition and difference and return that values. In the earlier subroutine, what you are doing, what are the calculation we are doing, that calculated value we are displaying there only. I want to return that values. So if you want to return any values and if you want to receive them, we have to use the keyword changing. Changing, I'm going to return how many values? Two values. So I'll take v underscore r1 and v underscore r2. Okay, what is the understanding here? Using is a keyword for passing the parameters to subroutine. Changing is a keyword to return the values from the subroutine. Let me define the subroutine. Form sub2. Okay, overall, how many formal parameters you have to take? 4. Because we have 4 actual parameters, so I should have 4 formal parameters. The number of formal parameters always depends upon the number of what? Actual parameters. So form sub2 using, I'll give some what formal parameters name m and n. Okay, I'll just stop it here. Let's see what happens when I do syntax check. I got there in the 15th line. Different number of parameters in form and perform. Number of formal parameters is 2, but the number of actual parameters is what? 4. Right? So here also I must take 4 formal parameters. Is it clear? So I'll say here what? Changing. I'll give some variable names like K1 and K2. Okay, save it. Check for the syntax. No errors. Done. Next I'll say here K1 equal to something m plus n, K2 equal to m minus n. If you take C, C++, Java, in order to return a value from a function or method, I believe we use return keyword. And I also think in case of Java and C language or C++ also, we can return only one value from a function. A function can return only what? One value. Here, the number of return values, the number of return parameters depends upon what number of changing parameters. So I need not use any return keyword. K1, K2 are marked as changing parameter, na? So they are considered as what return values. This K1, K2 will come and sit in what? V underscore R1 and V underscore R2. Okay. So now I'll say values of v underscore r1 and v underscore r2 after calling sub2. I'll print v underscore r1 value as well as v underscore r2 value. Okay, for your understanding, before calling the subroutine also, I'll try to print that r1 and r2 value. Understood? So by default they are integer, na? So at this stage I'll get what? 0. Next, we are passing that x and y value. We are doing some calculation. The calculated results are stored in K1 and K2. These two values are returned back where they are received in the changing parameters. They are received in V underscore R1 and V underscore R2. Let's see this. So when I execute F8, what happened here? R1 and R2 before calling subroutine is what? 0, 0. And after calling subroutine is what? 35 and what? Something 5. So what is the meaning is, if you want to return any value from a subroutine, we have to use what keyword, what parameter type? Changing. And how many values we can return means there is no restriction. In some programming languages like C language, we can return only one value, but here I can return any number of values. And yeah, that's it. Yeah, any questions, please ask. So how do we interpret this? I'm calling the subroutine sub2. X value will come and sit in M. Y value will come and sit in N. R1, R2. Initially they are zeros. That 0 will come and sit in K1 and K2. We are doing the calculation. Again, K1, K2 will be returned. They are received back in what? R1 and what? R2. That is the understanding. Right. So we understood so far how to pass parameters, how to return the values. Okay. Yeah, done. So far I'm passing what integers as what parameters. Let me try to pass some character values, also format color 1 year. I'll give some color, format color 2. Okay, so somewhere here, observe this carefully. I'll declare one variable somewhere here, data, v underscore str, type what, string, value. I'll give some value what, gens of technologies. Gens of technologies. Okay, done. Let us call one subroutine. Perform, I'll give the subroutine name as sub3. I want to pass this str as values. I'll use a keyword what? V underscore str. Okay. V underscore str. I'll also pass psi datum. I'll also pass what? Psi datum. Okay. So when I do syntax check, I'm getting an error. The form sub3 does not exist. We are trying to call a non-existing subroutine. So what I'll do, let me define form sub3. How many what actual parameters I have to take? Two actual parameters, because we are passing what, two formal parameters. One is a string variable, another is the date. So I'll say here form sub3. I'll say using you give any name whatever you want. So I'll say something lv underscore str. Okay, and I'll say something lv underscore what, date. Let's see what happens. Save it, check for the syntax. I don't have any errors. Let me try to print it. Right, I'll print both what, lv underscore str as well as lv, and I'm just receiving and printing, that's all. When I execute, I got gens of technologies and I got what, date 28. So what I'm trying to show here is any kind of standard data types you pass, whether it is integer, pack, date, time, string, you have to use what keyword, using keyword. And any value we are returning, any standard data you are returning, you have to go for a changing. Right. Now what I'll do is, so we understood how to deal with standard data types as what parameters in what subroutine. Now let me try to declare one internal table. I'll try to pass internal table as a parameter to what, subroutine. Acha, what are the concept I'm talking here? This concept will be same for what? External subroutines. Last class we have seen how to, where to create the external subroutines. We can create it in a subroutine pool, or we can create it as part of another external program. So I'll create one internal table. I can create it anywhere. Okay, let me create it here only, or I'll do one thing. I'll declare all the variables at the top. Right. So here only I'll try to create the internal table. So blindly we will not create now. Before creating any internal table or work area, we have to analyze the fields what you want to declare, what data types you want. Okay. So I'll go for the traditional employee internal table. So I'll say types begin of what? Some name I'll give ty underscore emp. I'll declare some fields. Employee number type I. I'll take another field, employee name of something 20, type what, C. Okay, I'll take only two fields, end of what, ty underscore emp. Okay, so based on this types structure, I'll declare the internal table, t underscore emp, type table of ty underscore emp. Okay, so I declared the internal table and what, work area. Fine, that's all. Okay, now what I'll do, before passing that internal table as a parameter, let me fill some data in the internal table. What is the traditional way of filling the internal table? assign the data to the work area and append it to what? Internal table. So we know the process. I'll directly give it. Okay, clear W underscore EMP, or else I'll do one thing. Just for the thing. What I want is, what are the logic I am going to write for filling the internal table? I want to put it in a separate block. So I'll call one subroutine, perform fill EMP. Any name you give, any subroutine name, it is user defined. Remember, you can give any name. I'll just give a meaningful subroutine name, fill EMP. I have to define this subroutine. So at the end, I have to define it. Or else what I can do is, observe this carefully. When I double click on this subroutine, it is saying that subroutine so and so does not exist. Do you want to create? Yes. Where you want to create? Whether you want SAP to create a separate include program, or you want to create in the main program. At this stage, we don't know what is include. We don't know how to work with includes. I'll go for what? Main program. That is current program. That is 34. Okay, I'll choose this. So when I continue, see that the template will be auto generated. Form into form will be auto generated with some comments here. So what is the logic I want to implement here? I want to prepare the data in my internal table. What is the traditional way of preparing it? Assign the data to the work area. From work area, append it to what? Internal table. So I'm not talking about those statements. Already we are strong in that. W underscore EMP if an employee number equal to something 6. W underscore EMP if an employee name equal to Raju. I'll do one thing. I'll take one more field. Okay. One more field I took, that is designation. So here I'll say W underscore EMP hyphen employee designation equal to something manager. Okay. Repeat this process. Sorry. After this, you have to append. Already we know all these things. Append W underscore EMP to T underscore EMP. Okay. Let me copy paste. I'll give some records here. Some employee number. Okay, so I'm having some around 4 records in the internal table. Save it, check for the syntax, no error so far. So observe here, I'm just calling one subroutine. As part of this subroutine definition, I appended some data to the internal. The question arises, why I have to write in subroutine? Don't write it there only. Try to write it there only, no problem. But what should be our agenda? We should try to modularize your programs. Whenever you are developing any object in the real time, we should try to modularize your program. Try to break your requirement. Try to break the functionality into multiple subparts. So the advantage of putting in the subroutine is what? I can call it any number of times, and also the maintenance becomes easy. In future, if I want to change the content of my internal table, I'll directly go to this subroutine. I'll do the necessary changes. Okay, right. So I appended some records. So my agenda is, I want to pass that internal table as a parameter to what? Our subroutine. Let's see how to do it. Yeah, observe this. Yeah, how do you call? Perform, perform. You give any name, whatever you want. I'll just say display EMP. Okay, some meaningful name. So what is my agenda here? I want to pass that internal table as a parameter. Na? What is the internal table name? T underscore what? EMP. T underscore EMP is the name of the internal table. So far, what are the keywords we used? Using keyword and the changing keyword. Now also, I'll try to use using keyword using the internal table. So what we are doing now? We are trying to call a subroutine and we are passing internal table as a parameter using what keyword? Using keyword. So when I do syntax check, obviously I'll get an error. What is that? Form display does not exist. So every subroutine has to be defined. Let me define it here. Okay. Somewhere here, I'll say form display EMP end form. So if I leave it like this, obviously I'll get an error. What error? The number of parameters are not matching. I got an error. Different number of parameters in form and perform. Formal parameters are 0, actual parameters are 2. Understood? Because while calling the subroutine, we are passing one parameter. Na? So let me take a formal parameter. So I'll say, here also I'll say using keyword LT underscore EMP. Some name. I can give T underscore EMP also. Already I told you the formal parameter name and actual parameter name can be same. But since we are very new to ABAP, I'll give a different name just to avoid confusion. Done. Let's see what happens. Save, check for the syntax. I don't have errors. We are happy. Okay. Let me try to activate, execute, F8. I didn't got any error also. I didn't got any runtime error also. I didn't got any runtime error. So earlier, what is the sentence I told? What is that I told? Whenever we are passing standard data types as parameters to a subroutine, what is the keyword you have to use? Using keyword. When I say standard data types, we are referring to what predefined data type like integer, character, pack, date, time kind of thing. Now we want to pass internal table as a parameter, which is a user defined data type. Okay, I'm using keyword, I'm able to pass, but I'm not getting any runtime error. Okay, now what I'll do? Okay, since using is working, I'll keep that using as it is. My agenda now is my agenda now is I want to loop this internal table and display. I want to display the data from the formal internal table. What is the formal internal table? LT underscore EMP. This T underscore EMP is global. Already we know anything you declare outside the block is global. I can access it anywhere within the program. So now my T underscore EMP has got some 4 records. That 4 records, I'm assuming that they are copied to what? Uh, the formal parameter LT underscore EMP. I'll try to loop it. Loop at LT underscore EMP. Loop at LT underscore EMP. Understood? Done. And here I'll say into. This is an internal table without header. Na? Understood? If you see the T underscore EMP, it is declared as what? Type table of so. Am I using any addition like with header line? No. So it is considered as what? Without header. So since it is without header, I require a work area to process. Na? Can I use the above work area inside my subroutine? Yes, this work area also is global. Na? I can access it anywhere. So I'll say loop at LT underscore EMP using W underscore EMP, and here I'll say end loop. Okay, let's see whether it works or not. When I do syntax check, it is giving an error. It is giving an error dot expected after LT underscore EMP. So I'll go by the errors. So this is giving me what syntax error. So I'll just remove this. I'll keep it like this. Let's see what happens. Save it. Check for the syntax. Good. I got an error here. LT underscore EMP is neither specified under what tables nor is it defined as an internal table. When I can use loop and loop, I can use loop and loop only on internal table, but it is saying that it is unable to recognize LT underscore EMP as a internal table. It is unable to recognize LT underscore EMP as a internal table. Am I clear? So that's why it is giving the error. So what is the adjustment I'll do now? Since it is not recognizing that as an internal table, at the time of calling that subroutine also, instead of using keyword, I will use tables keyword. So now onwards, the blind rule is whenever we are dealing with internal tables as parameters to a subroutine, what is the keyword we have to use? Tables keyword. Tables keyword. So here also I'll say, at the time of definition also I'll say tables. Let's see what happens. Save it, check for the syntax. Good, I don't have any errors. I'm able to loop. I'm able to loop. Let me try to display. Right? What? LT underscore EMP hyphen what? Employee number. Only employee number I'm trying to display. Let's see that. No, okay. I got what? An error. What is that? The data object LT underscore EMP has no structure and therefore no component called employee number. Okay, it is unable to recognize that employee number field. Am I clear? It is unable to recognize the employee number field. Now I'll say loop at LT underscore EMP into what is the work area? W underscore EMP. Na? I'll try to use that into class here. Let me check allowed or not. Save it. Check for the syntax. I don't have any errors. Done. Let me execute. I got the employee numbers. Na? Employee number 6, 16, 9 and what? 13. Clear? So if you want all the fields, you do it. I'll say W underscore EMP hyphen employee name, W underscore EMP hyphen what? Employee designation. Save it. Check for the syntax. Done. Execute. So I got the data. So when I execute, I got this data. Okay, 4 records I got. I'll debug. I'll debug, just observe. I'll put the breakpoint on the 39th line. I am not interested to debug the whole program. I want the debugging to be started from 39th line. So I'll put the breakpoint there, execute. I'll say F8. Yeah, try to understand. What is my global internal table here? T underscore EMP. Now, what do you mean by global? Anything you declare outside the block, they are global. So if you see this T underscore EMP, yes, it has got what? 3 fields. How many records? 0 records. If you see, double click on T underscore EMP, 3 fields are there without any data, right? Now I'm trying to call this subroutine fill EMP. What is the logic we wrote inside that subroutine? We are assigning the data to the work area. From work area, we are appending it to the internal table. I am not interested to debug this subroutine. Okay, so what I can do to bypass the debugging of this subroutine, to bypass the debugging of this block, I'll press what? F6. What that F6 will do? Internally it will execute that particular subroutine. What is that logic we wrote? It that we are filling the internal table. Na? As of now, we have 0 records. So I'll say F6. Yes, you can see how many records I got. 4 records in T underscore EMP. All the 4 records are there in T underscore EMP. Done. Now we are trying to call the subroutine by passing this internal table as a parameter. What is the formal internal table I declare? LT underscore EMP. Na? If you see LT underscore EMP, it is showing it as what? Invalid, because it is formal. Na? The lifetime and scope of the formal parameters are what? Within that block, within that particular block. So the memory is not yet allocated. Now I'm calling the subroutine. So what should be our understanding? Whatever the data is there in T underscore EMP will be copied to what? That formal internal table LT underscore EMP. Let's see that. I'll say F5. Why I'm saying F5? Because I'm interested to debug the business logic of the subroutine. So I'll say F5. Control jumps to the definition. Ah, good. Observe this carefully. Now LT underscore EMP, it is recognized as what? Internal table. It is recognized as the internal table. So if you go to this, yes, you can see all the 4 records, whatever is there in the actual internal, they are getting copied to a formal internal table. Done. Okay, so I'm looping it. How many times this loop will be iterated? 4 times. I'm not interested to debug, so I'll say F8. I got that. So what is the summary? Whenever we are dealing with what? Internal tables as a parameters, we have to use a keyword tables as part of subroutine call as well as subroutine definition. What we have done so far is We are just passing the internal table as a parameter, and we are displaying the content of that particular internal. We have received that in the formal internal table. We are iterating that formal internal. We are displaying the data. Am I clear? I am not manipulating. I am not manipulating the content in the formal internal table. I am just displaying. I'm not manipulating means I am not adding additional data, I am not deleting the existing data, or I am not updating the existing data. I'm just what? Displayed. I just displayed it. So what I'll do now is see the change here. Okay, yeah. So control come to this. Now I'll say uline. Observe this carefully. Format color, I'll give some color. I want to count the number of records in the global internal table. So I'll say, what is that I forgot? Count. I should require one variable, one integer variable declare. So I'll declare v underscore count. Type A. How do you count the number of records? I can use a describe statement, or I can use lines addition. So I'll say v underscore count equal to lines of what is the actual internal table t underscore emp. Yeah, done. Okay, t underscore emp. I'll say write number of records in what t underscore emp is what v underscore count. So when I execute, obviously it has to show me the count as what 4. Yeah, number of records in t underscore emp is 4. It is understood. Now my agenda is try to understand. Yeah, I want to pass this internal table again as a parameter to subroutine, and I want to manipulate that particular internal table. In the earlier subroutine, what we are doing, we are passing that internal table as a parameter to this subroutine, but we are not manipulating the content of the internal table. I'm just looping and displaying. Am I clear? I'm just looping and displaying. I'm not manipulating the content. Okay, so the diagram is not required. Fine. So I'm not manipulating the content. Now I want to manipulate. So what I'll do here is, how do you pass subroutine as a parameter? Same. Perform. Sorry. How do you pass internal table as a parameter? Perform. I'll give some subroutine name. Manipulate EMP. Don't think that I have to give manipulate EMP. You give whatever you want. But I'm providing a meaningful subroutine name. Perform manipulate EMP. Manipulate underscore EMP. Acha. Manipulate underscore EMP underscore gens of technologies. Gens of technologies. I'm giving what? Some subroutine name. Some subroutine name. Okay. I'll say, how do you pass internal table as a parameter? Tables. Tables. What is the internal table name? T underscore EMP. Let's see whether I accept or not. What is the name of my subroutine? Manipulate underscore employee underscore gens of technology. So when I do syntax check, good. I got an error. The form does not exist. So I can give any lengthy name. Okay, so let me give it as something manipulate underscore emp only. Let me try to define that. So somewhere here, I'll say form. What is that subroutine name? Manipulate emp. Manipulate emp. Manipulate underscore emp. Manipulate underscore emp. Here also I have to take tables. Tables. I have to take the formal internal table lt underscore emp. Good. So in the earlier subroutine, if you analyze what you are doing in the earlier subroutine, we are just iterating the internal table and displaying. Now what is my agenda? What is our understanding? Whatever the data is there in t underscore emp will be copied to what? Lt underscore emp. Now from this lt underscore emp, I want to delete managers. I want to delete managers from lt underscore emp. Okay. So how do I delete? I'll say delete LT underscore EMP where employee designation equal to what? Manager. Make clear. All the 4 records are copied from T underscore EMP to LT underscore EMP. Yes, Raju? No. See. Here. Acha, here what I give? Here I give correct. Okay, right. I can give any name, but the definition and calling it should be same. Correct. Anyhow, I'll get that syntax error at the time of what? When you're doing the syntax check, I'll get an error. Let me correct it now only. Done. Right. So manipulate. What is the spelling? Yeah, done. Okay. So what is my agenda here? I want to delete managers from which internal table? From formal internal table. Done. Let me check whether it is okay or not. Save. Check for the syntax. Good. I got an error in the 106th line. 106 line, I got an error. What is that error? The row type of the table must be identifiable statically in what? Where? The row type of the table must be identifiable statically in where? Row type is nothing but line type, nothing but structure. Okay. So in the earlier case, I didn't got this error because we are just looping that formal interval. We are displaying the content. We are not doing any changes. I am not adding new records. I am not destroying the existing records. I am not updating. I am not doing any changes. But here I am trying to use some delete statement on the formal internal level. It is giving me some error. The row type of the table must be identifiable statically. So what you have to do in these cases is, earlier, how do you pass a parameter? How do you pass internal parameter? By using tables keyword. In the earlier case also same thing, but here we are not doing any manipulation. Here we are doing the changes. So what you have to do is, whenever you want to perform some processing on the internal table, we have to specify the structure of that. How do you specify? Where do you specify? Shall I do it here? No, I think we should not do it here. Somewhere here. Somewhere here at the time of definition, I have to specify the line type of the internal table. I have to specify the row type of the internal table. Nothing but structure. How do you specify? Structure, I'll give the work area name W underscore EMP. Means we are informing SAP each line of this internal table has got what structure? W underscore EMP. W underscore EMP also is created based on the same types template only, na? Same types template. So it will have the intelligence. Done. Now let me check. Save it. Check for the syntax. Any errors? No errors. So when we are to use structure keyword means when we are doing the manipulations on the formal internal table, you have to specify the structure. In the earlier case also, if you specify structure, it will not give me any error. Okay, there also I'm specifying now. Okay, when I do syntax check, yes, I'm not getting any error, but it is not required here. Okay, also not required means structure is not mandatory here because I am not doing any manipulations on my formal internal table. But here if I say like this, if I leave it like this, what is happening? It is giving me what? Syntax error, right? It is giving the syntax error. So that is the reason I must specify the structure. Good. Check it, no errors, fine. Okay, now another point. We are doing the manipulations on the formal internal table. Na? What manipulations I have done? I'm trying to delete the managers. I'm trying to delete the managers from where? Formal internal table. I want to understand whether it will reflect the original internal table. I mean to say the actual internal table. How do I confirm? I have to go back there and to loop and display, or you just count the number of records. So before calling the subroutine, where is that? Yeah. Number of records in T underscore EMP, before calling what? Subroutine. Before calling subroutine. Now once again I'll count. After calling the subroutine also, I will count. Again, I'll use the lines function, number of records in T underscore EMP after calling what? Subroutine. Okay, let's see what happens. The point you have to focus here is we are doing the manipulations on what? Formal internal table. I want to understand whether it has got any effect on the actual internal table. Let's see that. Save, check for the syntax, execute. Good. What happened here? Before calling, we had 4 records. After calling, we have only what? 2 records. Because might be there are 2 records managers. Both the records got deleted. So what is the point here? Any changes you make to the content of the formal internal table will auto reflect the content of the actual internal table. I repeat, any operations, any manipulations you do on the formal internal table content will automatically reflect the actual internal table content. We can't stop that. That is a default behavior. And when you have to use the structure addition here, when you want to perform any operations, when you want to perform any manipulations in the formal internal table, it is mandatory to specify the structure of the internal table by using the structure addition. If you feel this is confusion, every time use structure, not an issue. Here also, even though you are not doing any operations, even though you are not doing any manipulations, here also I can use what? Structure. Okay, so any questions, please ask. Yeah, we can use Rashmi, we can use, but we need to wait for a few days because there is another syntax of field symbol. Earlier syntax, whatever I discussed, that is a base syntax, and that syntax will own only one field. But here, each line of the internal table will have multiple fields. Na? So I can take field symbol, but there is a different syntax. So we need to wait for a few days to understand that syntax. But the answer is yes, we can. So to summarize these things, what are the keywords we use? Using keyword, changing keyword, and tables keyword. Whenever you're dealing with parameters to subroutine, we use the keywords using, changing, and what? Tables. We go for using keyword as part of subroutine call as well as subroutine definition when you're dealing with what? Standard data types as what? Parameters. Okay, and whenever you want to return any standard data types as parameters, we go for a changing parameters. And we use tables keyword whenever you are dealing with the internal tables as parameters. It is mandatory to specify the structure of the internal table as part of formal internal table in case if you are doing any manipulations on the formal internal table. Any changes we make to the content of the formal internal table will automatically reflect the actual internal table. And what are the concept I discussed this for internal subroutine, the same concept applies for what? External subroutine. Same keyword, same. Already last class we have seen how to create the external subroutine. So the same syntax we use for external also. Right, so I'll stop now. Tomorrow what we'll do is we'll continue with this modelization. We'll see what is the difference between pass by value, pass by reference, and we'll get into another modulation techniques called as include programs. Okay, so this subroutine include programs, function model, and internal tables, they are base for the rest of the concepts. Tomorrow also we'll continue with subroutine and we'll start with include programs. Include programs is a small concept. We'll finish up that tomorrow. Once we are done with the include programs, we'll get into function models probably from day after tomorrow. Or if time permits, I'll start function models also tomorrow only. Chalo then. So thank you everyone. We'll continue tomorrow.